Is it already recording? What do you see? Like, do you see my terminal?
I don't see your terminal. I see your faces and I see your recording in the upper left-hand corner.
Okay, right, because I didn't press share screen. All right. Thursdays are my long days. Here we go. Do you see my terminal? All right, perfect. So this is the repo that the repo that I'm going to be going through. It is this Flask demo, and just to open it up to show you what is in here, in Flask demo, I have two apps. I have one that's just Flask, and I have one that's Flask with Dash. And I think the first step with thinking about your front end is thinking what kind of front end. There's actually three. There's app.py. App.py is just Dash. So there's Flask and there's Dash, and there's also the option of putting them both together. And so when do you want to use which? Flask is if you don't want to have any plotly graphs. So if you just want to have something that like is take in inputs, put it through a model, output. In that case, you just need a Flask app. If you think you want to show off your EDA or the results of your model can be shown in a graph or something with Plotly or with Dash, you want to do Dash, and I'll show you all three. And then also there's the option where you can do both. So let's start with Flask because I think that's the more straightforward one. I'm going to cd into the Flask app. And then I'm going to actually open it up in Atom. So when we're doing a front end, the thing to know is that we are not using Jupyter Notebook anymore. Everything that you need for your app needs to be in a Python file. So in this example, actually, I think I'll just show you the app first. Let's see, where is the README? I always forget what the command is, but to run the Flask app, you type in python-m flask run. And what's going to happen is this is going to pop up, and it's going to tell you that it's running on this URL, and this is what you're going to copy and paste into your browser. And I'll show you this project. This is kind of like a funny project that I was doing. Someone challenged me to write an innuendo detector. And so I did that. It was just a naive Bayes classifier, trained on Twitter, trained on tweets, hashtag that's what she said. That's how I trained this classifier. And so how this works is you can input words to see if that's something that she said. These are my friends testing my app. So these are not mine. But for example, if this is my input, I press submit, it'll run it through the model, and then you'll have an output there. And if we go back, I have a URL here to classify another, just to see an example that it is not an innuendo, you get this different output. So this is just a really simple Flask app where it's built using, basically the project behind this is just a classifier with two classes. So the structure of that is here. There are several things going on. These are all the files that you need. First thing, usually when I think about starting to set up a front end is what functions are necessary. And in this case, I'm thinking about how do I take input to output, and what do I need to transform the data? Do I need whatever pipelines I'm needing? I need to put that in a function and put that in a .py file. So in this case, because it's just a text classifier, I basically had two big functions, one to pre-process the data, and then one to just classify it. And these are the functions that I'm going to feed into the Flask app. So functions.py is the important one because this is all of your stuff. And this is when you're going to use, I personally use pickle files. So you can see here, here I use tfidf. So I have my pickled tfidf. I was just working on it. I trained it in a Jupyter Notebook, and I just pickled the tfidf. I also had a list of relevant words. finally, I had my naive Bayes model. So those were my pickles. I actually saved them in a pickle file here. Next thing, because this was NLTK, I also had the corpus here just in case. The corpus here is because I actually ended up hosting this on a website and I just needed to upload the entire corpus to a website. That was that. All right, so functions has all these functions. The next big one is app.py. So app.py is the one that's like, I honestly don't fully understand it because it's more of a web development thing. But the way I understand it is the route just tells you like where in your website it is. So because you know how when you have a website that's like slash something, that's basically what it is. So if I had different pages, but in this case, I do not have different pages. If you were to have different pages, you would do like app.route slash page one or whatever it is. So when you're working with a Flask front end, there are get and post requests. And so here's where I take that starting page of mine, and based on what the model outputs, have it render the different pages. So based on like whether it was innuendo or not innuendo, it would show you a different page. So here I have the first page, which is the get method. I always think of it because you're getting the raw data on that page. And then all you do is you're rendering a template. The way I do it, I know there are different ways to do it, but I just render HTML templates, and I'll show you those templates later. So I have like that whole web page set up on an HTML template called classifier. And then here on the same route, I have this post where it's actually gonna run my prediction function. So you see I imported from functions. I imported that prediction function, made the prediction, and then based on whether the prediction was 0 or 1, render different templates. And here is also where you tell it the text, where it's going to take the variable that you input, and I'll show you where this text comes in a little bit. So this is basically like, this is where I input the data, and here's where it decides which page to render. So that's like the Python part. This next part where I talk about the HTML, I honestly am not kind of fuzzy on it as well, but I'll try to explain the best I can. So each of my templates being each web page, is in this template file. So let's start with the classifier. So this is based on what I know from HTML. You have all of the, I guess, the head of the doc, that basically the stuff that doesn't show up. Every HTML page apparently has it, so you have to have it there. And this is basically that like title that shows up on the top here. In that head, you can also define like styles that you want to keep common throughout your whole web page, or yeah, throughout this page. So let's say that I know every time I have an H1, and H1 goes to H6. It's like the decreasing sizes of text. Basically, every time I have H1, I want it to have this color. Yeah, and so I don't have to define the color every time I have a new thing. So all the styles I've defined here, I did take this code from somewhere else, so I don't fully understand it either. But these are classes that you define as well. So these like .center is an attribute that you're going to see me use later to center certain elements, and this one as well. Anyways, this body is where the page starts. So you can sort of, let's put it side by side and take a look at what's going on. All right. Let's close this. So this is the entire page. You can see I started with an H1 with the title, H4, this subtitle. I embedded a GIF here, H3 for this part. And then here is where I have that post method, that post to the Flask get. So input text, name text, and that's the form. And then I just have that submit button there. And then I also linked my own GitHub. And so with HTML, I always just think of it as like building elements top to bottom. So this is that. So remember that this is called text. This part is really important. That has to match in app.py, that has to match this. Yeah, that's the important part, that this, whatever's in this get form, has to match this name here. And that's how you get it to like interact with your whatever input. And now to like look at an example of like one of the result pages. This one is here. So very similarly, I have like all this stuff in the head. I had like the styles that I wanted for the entire page. And then all I did here was use it, and I took in the variable. Variable, it sort of remembers what that was, because based on app.py, it takes in, that is a built-in HTML Python thing. That if you have like that double curly bracket from here, it knows that that's your input. So that was your input, because I wanted to like, remember what you had input, because I thought that's just important. And then yeah, the rest of the stuff is the same. That's the main thing. That's really all it is for just a Flask app. Any questions about that? Yeah. All these files are, I think they just got sent over to your Slack channel. So all of this is there. If you want to do a Flask app, something as simple as like input to output, this would be the easiest thing to do. Cool. Next thing, and because we're running it here, you just Command C to stop it. If you don't Command C to stop it, you can't rerun it because it'll say that the port is being used. So always remember to Command C to stop rather than just like closing out your terminal window.
So I do have a question. So with one Flask app, what are the essentials? You need your pickles, your HTML, your functions.
Your pickles. I would say on the Python side, the pickles and your functions. And then and also the app, because the app part is what's really connecting your Python code with the HTML stuff. So you need the app, and then you need all your templates. Yeah, all these other files, it's kind of tough to go into right now, but these other files were just necessities for when I wanted to host it. And I'll send out resources on how I got this to host, because I just followed the same tutorial as well. That part I really don't understand. But yeah, I managed to get it on a Heroku app.
I was just thinking of it in terms of what are our minimum viable product essentials. So that is helpful to know.
Awesome. So definitely the app, your functions, your pickles, and your templates. Yeah. Let me just double check. Yeah. I do confuse the two, my two apps here all the time. But yeah. Before I go into Flask with Dash, I'm going to talk about this one. This one, this one is for like the part-time thing that I'm doing. So I can't show you I can't send you the exact code, but I sent you basically like I stripped out all the sensitive stuff, and I'm sending you that. So this won't run on its own, but I'm going to run the version that I have here. And to run it, I always forget let me double check how to run this. I think it's Python app.py. Oops, hold on. Oh yeah. So if it's just dash, please work. Awesome. So if it's just dash, Python app.py, and I will open this up as well. All right, so this is app.py, and I'm going to pull up the app and do a side-by-side again. So this pulled up here. So this is that clustering project that I've been working on, and I'm just showing how you can do like a purely dash front end. Oops, not full screen. Come on. Let's do left and then right here. Cool. So this is the app, and this is purely with Dash. So there's no Flask at all. So So what I have here is not done yet. I'm still working on it. But here what I have is I have this like TSNE cluster. And then I have this thing where you like would choose a user, and then ideally it would highlight the user. Haven't gotten that to work yet. And then I have like this bar where I'm gonna like put in some sample search terms like coffee shop. And then ideally also the thing that I haven't fixed yet is I want it to like output what cluster the prediction is. So let me explain how I built this in this. So very similarly to what we were doing with Flask, you need the same things. You need to also like have your things like pickled and your functions written up in like a different functions file. So here I'm just like opening the pickles and like I'm just opening the CSV. So for Dash, I like to think start small to big. So I think, let me go over like the whole thing here. So there are a couple sections in this app.py. These are all the HTML elements. So here I'm defining like the header, the dropdown, which is this. And actually this exact syntax, the dash documentation is really, really good and really clear, a lot of examples. So I'm defining the dropdown, defining like the text input bar here. And then, so these are all the HTML things. This is literally what the site is made up of. And then these are callbacks. So I'm going to explain each of these parts. So with these HTML elements, as I was saying, I like to go small to big. So first I like made, so think of each part of this app as like a section. And so here I have like a header section. Here I have this like drop down section. I have this text input section here. And then what I did was I just wanted them in a nice format. Hey, James. I wanted them to be in a nice grid format. So what I did was I just discovered this, but in Dash, they have these like bootstrap things called bootstrap components, which makes doing your Dash layout a lot easier. But what I'm doing here is I'm making a row of stuff. And in that row, I put my drop down and then my text input. So this section here, these two elements are in a row. And then I have this grid where if I ever wanted to add more stuff, I could do that. But this itself is also a row with like two columns. And so I'm just putting them together. I'm like taking the small parts and making them into like slightly bigger parts. And then because HTML goes up to down, when I'm defining my main site, the layout is literally header, subhead, which is what I called these two things, and then grid. So I think like small to big. Does that make sense? So I'm defining each of my like smaller elements up here, and then putting them together on this main site. And this stuff, I honestly don't really know what it means. This is the title up here, and then this is the layout. Those are the main things. Cool. All right. So the tricky part with Dash, I think, is callbacks, because, and this is something that I haven't fixed with this yet, but callbacks are basically, like I mentioned that when I wanted to have like specific users and have them like update on a graph, a callback is, you know, it takes in inputs and outputs new things on whatever thing. That was not a good sentence, but the idea here is I'm taking in inputs from this drop-down list, and I want to update the output of this graph. So by itself, they're actually not really connected, but the callbacks are sort of what connects the data that you're putting in and like outputting. And callbacks took me a really, really long time to understand. But let's just talk about, let's talk about this one, because I haven't fixed this one yet. This one, I'll talk about another time. So ideally what I wanted to happen here is I put in some search term, and it will take this search term and then do some predictions on it. And getting this to update, because these are different elements, is a callback in itself. So as you can see down here, I have a function and I have this decorator here. That's the app callback. So in the decorator of the app.callback is where you define where it takes the input from and where it's going to output whatever return value you have. So let's see.
So Yash, I have a question.
Yeah.
So is a callback kind of like immediate feedback, essentially what's happening? So it's like a, I don't know, kind of a continuous, I'm trying to think of the right word, but it just updates based on immediate feedback, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
I think the main thing about it is it's connecting to different elements of the page.
The word I was thinking of is dynamic.
Ooh, yeah, definitely.
Right?
It's definitely dynamic.
Okay.
Which is why you see like every time, like this is just so fast that like whatever I'm typing pretty much updates there, which I'm actually really impressed by. But yeah, so as you can see here, each callback is what connects the two parts. So here I'm inputting the component raw text and its value property. And so this actually goes back to look for, okay, which component is called raw text? And I actually had defined it in my text input here, where the ID is raw text. And then remember it said here that it's going to look for the component property value. It looks for in the raw text here, it's going to take the value. And that's what it's going to take and put into that function as the input to the function. And then it's going to output into this user details as its child. So it's going to look for, it's going to take that information, run it through this function. And as you can see, the function I have here is whatever the input value is, return an H3 of sample search plus input value. So therefore, it's going to take whatever text I'm putting in there, run it through this, and output it in user details. So if we take a look at user details, where did I put user details? Oh, yeah, my user details, I only defined it straight away in this grid. And so user details is just a div. Div meaning like a part of the page, and I haven't really put anything there yet. So it's just going to update that section of the page. That makes sense? Yeah, it's kind of confusing. I personally only figured out that you could do dash without Flask on Monday. And so I just started putting this together a couple of days ago. And one of my old coworkers helped me out with this. And so I thought that I think that this is like one of the neater ways to like put everything together. I don't know.
So yeah. What is the difference? I'm sorry if I'm a little slow on the update.
Oh, no worries.
What's the difference between the two? What can you do in Flask that you can't do in Dash and vice versa?
They're just completely, so Dash is really just for Dash graphs, right? If you're making like a dashboard or if you just want to show off your like Plotly graphs, that's only on Dash. On Flask is just like a normal web page where you like can run your model and like have it output in whatever HTML you set up.
Right. So if you have, let's say, a HTML file, you can just plop it right up there and it will be seamless.
Yeah.
In theory.
On a Flask app?
On Flask.
Yeah.
Got it. Now I'm tracking. Okay.
Yeah, I know it's pretty confusing. Back in the day when I was a student, this was actually our Mod 1 project, doing a Flask and Dash app for some reason, which is the next thing I'm going to show you guys. That was awful, but I think it's because of that.
That's still crazy to me.
Yeah, I honestly think that's
even in 1.1 we didn't have that.
It's I was so traumatized. But yeah, same thing. You always want to make sure that you control C out of it because you don't want that port to be used. All right, so the last thing I wanted to show you guys is the Flask with Dash app, which is in here. Flask with Dash. And the way you run this, they all have a different command to run. This one is Python, Python run.py. And this one's complicated because of the way it's set up. I'm going to run this here, and I'm also going to open it in Atom. So there's a lot of stuff here. Doesn't look like it because they're all in this folder called dash package. And run.py basically has the code to run it. All right, let's see. This is Python run.py, and let's take a look at this. So you would use Flask with dash if you want your web page to have, like, maybe you want one page that has all dash and one page that has more Flask like HTML elements. So let me pull this up. All right, this one is a really simple example. Let's tile this to the right, and let's take this here. All right, so we have the run.py. I honestly don't really understand why the file structure has to be this way, but that's what we have, and it works. Here we have several more like important files. We have the init.py. So what run actually does, run actually looks for the init file and then runs that. Why? I have no idea. And here's where you define the dashboard, and you can set the path name to be /dash. I did that, so that's here. And I have that as /dash because I have this other file called routes here, which has different routes. So here you can see that I have my dashboard. I have this other route here, and these are all decorators. I have this other route here. If I do /hello, I just have a really simple function to return a string. Sidebays was because one of my old cohorts decided to name themselves Sidebays based on like the Bayesian dude. So there's that. And on top of that, I also have a path that brings you to my model. So if I go /model, I have another text classifier. This was like my mod 3 project that I just decided to put on the front end. And so this part is very similar to what I was talking about before with the just Flask. So you can see here, I have the two functions that first render the classifier HTML, and then based on the model will return either, so my two categories were whether a text is more about art or more about programming, would return either an art HTML or a programming HTML. Just really quickly, all the templates live in here where, let's see, if I do data science is cool, it will predict that it is a more sciencey, text. And if it's an artsy thing, it will output that it's an artsy thing. And so these HTMLs are super simple. Let's take a look. This art one is literally just this. All I have on the page in the body is this large image, text, and then a link to classify another page. That brings it back to that first page. So that is similar to the Flask part. Other things to talk about, let's see. Let's go back to routes. Yeah, so this part is very similar to the Flask bit. And then all of these functions live in the functions.py file where I had my pre-processing function and my classification function. So that's the Flask part. The dash part of this lives in dashboard.py. So if I go back to dash, I have this stuff. And so this is what we're seeing here, where I have H1, and under H1, you see that there is a say hello function. And I'll show you where that function comes from. I think it comes from here too. Yeah, it comes from here. So I just put a bunch of random functions here just to show that in the dashboard, I can use all these functions. So on these like layout Python files, you can still do all your Python code, which is why like back in functions, I could still like import stuff and like use the pickles. In this dashboard part, you can see I'm literally defining a list up here. And I can do like list comprehensions, and all of this data is what's rendering on this graph. And so this is actually the outdated Plotly syntax. The new Plotly with Plotly Express is a lot cleaner, but this is the old Plotly syntax. But all of this is just contained under graph.
I have a question right there.
Mm-hmm.
On that, is there a way you can pickle your Plotly as well from, like, let's say your project and upload it, or do you have to kind of hard code it in from, like, let's say Python?
Yeah, the thing is for Plotly, the cool thing about Dash is that it's interactive and it can update. And so technically you can pickle your Plotly, but usually if you want to have a Dash app, you have like all these callbacks. And
Right.
if you pickle your graph, I don't think you can do callbacks with it.
Okay, I track. So you would essentially, like, let's say you have a pre-existing Plotly Express,
Mm-hmm.
and you would just essentially copy and paste the code from your notebook?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, pretty much. And then you might have to like tweak it based on like what the inputs are and the outputs are. But yeah, the Plotly Express documentation is great, and the Plotly with Dash documentation is really good too. So that's that. Let me think what else I'm missing out. Let's see. There is. I have my pickles over here. The dashboard, the functions, and the routes. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's kind of hard to explain every little part of it because there is a lot. The most important thing if you're doing Flask with Dash is the file structure. And so you always have to remember that everything has to live in this Dash package folder. That's just the way the documentation had it set up. And then the most important things are the init and the routes. And if you do end up copying this over, just make sure all these imports are working. Because I think in your Learn environments, there is no like Dash package, or no, there is no Dash. And also on this dashboard, you see that there are all these other things that like allow you to render the graph and allow you to use HTML. So just make sure that you would probably have to import those, like pip install those. Yeah, I also have like a notes page that I wrote up, and it's basically everything that I've said, but probably more organized than how I'm saying it. So if you want, you can take a look at that. But that one I don't talk about Dash by itself because I only just discovered that. Cool. Any questions?
Yeah, I got one.
Yeah.
So for the text classifier, like,
Mm-hmm.
if you could help me understand how it works with regards to like not having that word in your corpus, or like, is your entire corpus living in a pickle somewhere and you pull it in?
Yeah. Okay, so if we go back to the model, and then let's take a look at, yeah, so the way that I set it up, there are a certain number of words that would be considered. So let's see, where would be a good, yeah, let's look at functions. So in my pre-processing stage, I actually had like a list of relevant words because I did a TF-IDF. And basically any word that isn't in my original TF-IDF, I can't even consider because that's not even a feature in my model. So that's why I had actually filtered out. Yeah, I had actually filtered out that only if like the word is in that TF-IDF relevant words. Yeah, that makes sense. So basically, I kind of do have like a set corpus for this text classifier that is saved in relevant words. And this is, I think, literally a list that I saved.
Okay.
And then that makes me ask a question.
All good.
Where is that file path relative to? So you start with dash package. Oh, so it's relative to the dash package at the...
Well, actually, that was a really good point that I forgot to mention. Because we're running, so dash package is actually here, but the thing is we're running from run.py. So that's why you always have to, we're running the app from run.py, which is why every time I need to like import something from somewhere else, I have to go into dash package first, which is why I know it could look kind of strange that like for example, in dashboard, even though dashboard is on the same level as functions, I have to do dash package dot functions, import all the functions. Yeah, that was something that took me too long to figure out. But yeah, I think I do note that in here somewhere.
Okay, and then it makes sense now because I see relevant words up there under pickles. Got it. Okay, sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I created this this resource for students about a year ago. So it's been a while since I've gone through it, but yeah, this template still holds true. One more thing I wanted to mention is, even though I've given this study group to a bunch of students, all of them end up using this other thing called Streamlit. And so Streamlit is this brand new thing. It came out maybe a year ago, and it is basically the easiest way for you to put together a front end for your machine learning project. Let me see if I can find an example. It's a very like plug and play thing. So you're literally just like taking the different parts from your, I think you still have to put everything into a .py file, but you don't have to worry about like layouts, because it's like, think of it like a Squarespace where they do it for you. But I have one particular student that did it and actually hosted it online. Take a look. So this student of mine actually wrote a blog on how he did it. And apparently it was really easy. I wonder if he has it linked. Is it that one maybe? I'm not good at reading. It takes me a while to find the specific thing. Let me see. Oh well, this is also a good resource to look at, because he like wrote out step by step how he did this. And basically like it's an easier way to make a front end. The downside is everyone who uses this, their app looks the same. So most of the time I end up with like 80% of my students using this and 20% using like Dash. Because I don't think you can put Dash on here. Yeah, just know that this is an option. Apparently very easy. I've never tried it, but I've had students who like put it together in a day. Yeah.
You know I'm going there.
Yeah, it's there are a lot of resources. I think their own tutorials are pretty good from what I've heard. I just never, I've never really like put it on. Like, see, I think here is where you can like, on that sidebar earlier on that like GIF, they show you like how you can edit your inputs, and it just like outputs nicely like that. But yeah, I wonder if I can find. I would really like to find this guy's project. But yeah, when I do, I'll send it out, and I'll send out resources for all of this stuff as well. Any other questions? Cool.
Not until I start applying it, and then I'll have 5,000 questions.
Yeah, no, yeah, like feel free to just ping me whenever. I think I just found his Heroku app. Perfect. So this is his app where he made like this Yelp report card, because he's into like the restaurant business and wanted to see like, he did like clustering on review data, very similar to what you're doing, Andy, actually, with like finding out like what's good and what's bad. So he like ended up with like different, let's see, like different like food service. I think that's what he did. And then you can like, yeah. So I think, let's just see what happens here. Whoa. Oh, so this is just like the rating for each restaurant. So these are where you choose your parameters. Oh, that was funny. But yeah, and then these update. So his was more of like a clustering project, a clustering then classification project. But yeah, I've seen that you can do some pretty cool things on here. And this took him a day to put together. Yeah, could be something to look into.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. I'll send this out in his article as well, because I think he explains it in a way that's like bootcamp student friendly. So I will do that. And you have all my templates on your Slack channel. Yeah. Any last questions? Cool. Awesome. We are right at 8 p.m. So thanks for listening to me drone on about something I don't really know too much about. But have a good night, you guys. Bye.